On the 13th of January 1929, the Wild West gunfighter Wyatt Earp died peacefully in his home in Los Angeles. The Old West that he and his buddies had created was already dead in nearly a generation. To me, the most amazing thing about the Wild West has always been that it occurred so recently. Wyatt Earp, the most famous of the Western lawmen, died quietly in his suburban bungalow amid his orange groves in Los Angeles, in a house with electric light and a phone and a washing machine. This man, who made his name with a horse and a gun and a badge, and not much else. Wyatt Earp was born in Illinois in 1848, and he went west as a teenager. He and his father and brothers worked all over the West as far as California as laborers, stagecoach drivers, miners, cops, gamblers, and saloon keepers. In Canada, frontier justice was imposed in an orderly manner by the Mounties. In most cases, they arrived in new territory before the settlers. Just the opposite was happening in the States. The people flocked into the empty land. They settled and started making money raising cattle or mining or farming. When crime cropped up, they appointed a member of the community to control it. There was no point in hiring a Sunday school teacher to go up against a gunfighter, so they usually hired another gunfighter. If they hired the best gunfighter, the town got law and order. If they hired the second best, the town got disorder and violence. From the late 1860s on, Earp and his brothers were sheriffs and marshals in various towns from Kansas south and west. They were also part owners of saloons, gambling halls, and houses where women were available to cowboys and miners. It sounds like the recipe for corruption, and by today's standards it probably was, but on the whole the Earps were fairly honest lawmen. Most of those positions Wyatt Earp held were elective, so his life was a mixture of business, law enforcement, and politics. His politicking brought him into conflict with another sheriff named Billy Behan. I'm not sure why screenwriters had picked up on Wyatt Earp's exploits and not on Billy Behan's. He was at least as colorful a character. Since both were lawmen, you might think they would have been on the same side, but they weren't. That rivalry led to the most famous gunfight in the history of the West, the shootout at the OK Corral. The OK Corral was in Tombstone, Arizona, where Wyatt's brother Virgil was town marshal. A gang of crooks called the Clanton Gang, friends of Billy Behan, went up against the Earp brothers and their pal, Doc Holliday. Holliday was a strange character, a southern gentleman, a dentist who quit his practice and moved west hoping the dry air would cure his tuberculosis. But he was probably the best gunman the West ever produced. The shootout of the OK Corral itself probably lasted about 30 seconds. 17 shots were fired and 3 men were killed, all Clantons. Virgil and Morgan Earp were wounded. 5 months later, 2 men shot Morgan in an ambush and killed him. Wyatt went on the warpath and nailed one of the Clantons. One of the best parts of the story escaped Hollywood as far as I know. While all this shooting was going on, Wyatt and Billy Behan had eyes for the same girl, a circus girl named Josie Marcus. Wyatt won her and they moved to California. Wyatt made his living as a saloon keeper in Alaska during the gold rush. Then he returned to California and became a fight promoter and racehorse owner. None of his fighters were champs, but one, Jack Kearns, quit to become a fight manager. He took over the career of another youngster from those Wild West days. That kid was called Jack Dempsey. By the time Wyatt Earp closed his eyes and died quietly in bed on the 13th of January 1929, the Wild West had become just memory and legend.